When I was 23, I thought family was forever. I thought loyalty ran deeper than money, deeper than failure, deeper than pride. I was wrong. At that time, my life was collapsing around me. I had dropped out of graduate school after my mental health took a nosedive. I was broke, drowning in student loans, working 2 part-time jobs just to keep the lights on in my apartment. My so-called close-knit family, who had always bragged about how we stick together through anything, suddenly became distant. It started small. Missed phone calls. Excuses about being too busy. Then the subtle comments. Maybe if you had stayed in school, we wouldn't be in this position. You should have thought about this before. We can't keep bailing you out. But here's the truth. They never really bailed me out. They just wanted me to feel guilty for existing. The final straw came one night when I swallowed my pride and asked my older brother for help with rent. Just a loan, something I would have paid back. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're a sinking ship, and I refuse to go down with you." That line has echoed in my head for years. From that moment, I knew I was on my own. So I hustled. I started freelancing online, writing, designing logos, anything that paid a few bucks. Slowly, I carved out a business. It was unglamorous at first. Sleepless nights. Eating ramen 3 times a day. Selling furniture just to invest in a better laptop. But here's the thing about being abandoned at your lowest. It lights a fire inside you. Every no becomes fuel. Every insult becomes motivation. And after years of grinding, that tiny freelance hustle became a full-scale agency. I hired staff. I built a brand. My work was being featured in magazines. I signed contracts with companies that once ignored my emails. That's when the phone calls started again. My mom suddenly wanted to have family dinners again. My brother wanted to reconnect. My cousins, who ghosted me when I was struggling, now slid into my DMs asking if I was hiring. And the best part? They pretended they had never abandoned me. They acted like nothing had happened. Like those years of silence, those cruel words, those nights I cried alone, didn't exist. But I remembered. Oh, I remembered every single word. The first time my brother asked me for a small investment in his startup idea, I just smiled. And I told him the exact same thing he once told me. "You're a sinking ship, and I refuse to go down with you." His face drained of color. And for the first time in years, I felt powerful. But this is only one story. Because mine isn't the only case where abandonment turned into empowerment. And the next one? It's even more brutal. Friendship, they say, is proven not in sunshine, but in storms. And I learned that the hard way. Back in my late 20s, I was the fun one in my group of friends. I was the one who organized weekend trips, planned surprise parties, and kept everyone laughing when the stress of adulthood weighed too heavy. My best friend, let's call her Melissa, was always by my side. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and swore we'd be ride or die for life. When I got sick, I thought Melissa would be there. It wasn't some passing flu. It was a diagnosis that knocked me off my feet, a chronic autoimmune condition. Suddenly, my body was unreliable. Some mornings I couldn't even get out of bed without pain slicing through my joints. My career derailed, my dating life evaporated, and I found myself sinking into depression. At first, Melissa acted concerned. She brought soup the first week after my hospital stay. She texted me once or twice, the kind of obligatory, thinking of you messages that vanish after the third exchange. But then, silence. When I reached out, desperate just for company, she said, "I can't deal with this negativity right now. I need to protect my energy." Protect her energy. Those words shattered me. Because wasn't I worth some inconvenience? Didn't all the years I carried her through breakups, bad jobs, and financial messes count for anything? Soon enough, Melissa vanished from my life. She stopped answering calls, unfriended me on social media, and ghosted me completely. Our other mutual friends followed her lead, like my sickness was contagious. I was left utterly alone. And let me tell you, loneliness while battling illness is a wound deeper than the disease itself. Nights blurred into mornings. Pain blurred into exhaustion. I felt invisible, discarded, like a burden. But then something inside me shifted. If no one was going to show up for me, then I had to show up for myself. I began journaling my recovery, sharing the rawest parts of my journey online. At first, it was just a way to cope. But people found me. Strangers who knew the same battles, who understood the fatigue, the doctors who dismissed us, the families who didn't believe us. My little corner of the internet grew. Thousands of followers turned into tens of thousands. Brands noticed. I started getting offers, partnerships, sponsorships, speaking invitations. Before I knew it, I wasn't just surviving my illness, I was thriving as a public advocate, running a full-time platform dedicated to chronic illness awareness. The irony? My sickness became my strength. And that's when Melissa reappeared. It started with a follow request. Then a comment, "So proud of you, girl," as if she hadn't abandoned me when I was crying in the dark. Next came the private message. "Hey, I know things got weird between us, but I'd love to catch up. Maybe we can collaborate? I'm starting a wellness coaching business, and I think we could do great things together." I stared at that message for a long time. All those years she was gone, I fantasized about what I'd say if she ever came back. Would I lash out? Would I ignore her? Would I forgive? When I finally replied, my words were simple. "You told me once you needed to protect your energy. And I respect that. Which is why I won't let you drain mine now." I hit send. Blocked her. And just like that, Melissa became a ghost again. Only this time, by my choice. The truth is, abandonment changes you. It hardens parts of you, sharpens others. But it also makes you see clearly. People who leave you at your lowest don't deserve a seat at your table when you rise. And as satisfying as it was to shut that door, the next story shows what happens when it isn't just a friend or a sibling, but the person you thought you'd spend forever with. Love is supposed to be the one thing that stays when everything else falls apart. At least, that's what I used to believe. I met Daniel when I was 26. He was charming in the kind of way that made you forget about red flags. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my best friend, my safety net, the person I thought would stand by me no matter what. When he slipped that silver band onto my finger and whispered, "It's you and me against the world," I believed him with every fiber of my being. But vows are easy to make when life is easy. The real test comes when it isn't. 2 years into our marriage, the cracks began. I lost my job during a company downsizing. Suddenly, the life we had built, the dinners out, the weekend getaways, the plans for a house, was under threat. I took on temp work to keep us afloat, but the money barely covered groceries. Daniel started to change. At first, it was sighs when bills piled up, the way he avoided eye contact when I asked about money. Then came the sharper words. "I didn't marry you to live like this. You need to get it together. I can't keep carrying dead weight." The worst part? I wasn't just broke. I was battling depression. Getting out of bed felt like wading through cement. I begged him for patience, for time, for the kind of support I thought marriage was about. Instead, one night after another fight over unpaid rent, he packed a duffel bag. I remember standing in the doorway, hair unwashed, eyes swollen from crying, watching the man who swore forever toss his toothbrush into a bag like I was nothing. "I can't do this anymore," he said coldly. "You're dragging me down with you. Maybe once you figure your life out, we can talk. But I'm not waiting around." And just like that, he was gone. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. For weeks, I kept expecting him to call, to come back, to realize what he had done. But the only thing I got was divorce papers, delivered with the efficiency of someone sending a utility bill. I was broken, bankrupt in spirit and finances. Some nights, I slept on the floor of my nearly empty apartment, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled faintly of him, wondering if I had been the fool all along. But pain has a strange alchemy. Given enough time, it can turn into something else. The months that followed were grueling. I threw myself into work, not just any work, but the kind that demanded every ounce of me. I freelanced, I networked, I taught myself skills I couldn't afford to pay for in classes. I treated my career like oxygen, because it was. Slowly, doors opened. First small gigs, then bigger clients, then a steady flow of projects. 3 years later, I wasn't just surviving. I had rebuilt. I had savings, a thriving business, and, most importantly, a sense of self-respect I had never known before. And then one ordinary Tuesday, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in years. Daniel. My stomach nodded. Curiosity won. I answered. His voice was soft, almost sheepish. Hey, I've been thinking about you. I saw your name in an article. Congratulations, by the way. You've really made something of yourself. I bit back a bitter laugh. He hadn't spoken to me in years, but suddenly my success made me worth dialing again. He rambled on about how he'd made mistakes, how he wasn't in the right headspace back then, how he never stopped caring. And then the kicker. I'd love to meet up. Maybe we can start fresh. Start fresh. As if the nights I cried myself to sleep, the humiliation of being discarded, the endless climb back from rock bottom, were just footnotes. I let him talk. I let him imagine for a few minutes that the door was even slightly open. And then I said calmly, clearly, Daniel, you left me when I had nothing. You watched me drown and chose to save yourself. And now that I've built an island, you want to live on it. But this home is mine, and you don't get to come back. There was silence. Then a quiet, broken, I understand. And just like that, I hung up. It wasn't anger that I felt. It wasn't even triumph. It was peace. Pure, unshakable peace. Because the truth is, sometimes closure doesn't come from someone else's apology. Sometimes it comes from realizing you don't need them anymore. That was the day I knew. Abandonment is painful, but it's also clarifying. It shows you who's really in your corner and who only loves you when it's easy. And while shutting that chapter was powerful, the next story? It's about the one abandonment that cuts deeper than all the rest, when your own parents decide you're no longer worth standing by. People always say, no matter what, your parents will love you. I used to believe that. I used to cling to it like a lifeline, thinking that no matter how hard life got, at least I had the unconditional love of the two people who brought me into this world. But love, I learned, can sometimes come with conditions, ugly, unspoken ones. Growing up, my parents weren't perfect, but they were my world. My dad was strict, my mom was the peacemaker, and I was the child who worked hard for their approval. I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my younger sister, who shined in every way parents love to show off at family gatherings. She was the honor student, the pageant queen, the one who never gave them trouble. I was the dreamer. I wanted to be a writer, to build something out of words. My parents tolerated it until the day I failed. It happened in my late 20s. I had just lost my job at a publishing company after corporate cuts. My relationship ended the same week. I was broke, broken, and living back in my childhood bedroom. For the first time, I saw disappointment etched in my parents' faces, not the we'll figure this out kind, but the why are you such a failure kind. At first, it was subtle. Comments at dinner like, you should be more like your sister, she never gives up. Or, if you had chosen a more practical career, you wouldn't be in this mess. But then came the real blow. One night, after I admitted I was 3 months behind on my car payments, my dad said it outright. We can't keep carrying you. Maybe it's time you learn the hard way. You're an adult now. If you sink, you sink. The words felt like knives. My mom didn't argue. She just looked away. 2 weeks later, they asked me to move out. Not with anger. Not with compassion. Just cold practicality. We need space. You'll figure it out. So I did. I packed my clothes into garbage bags, shoved them into the trunk of my beat-up car, and drove off with no idea where I'd sleep that night. I couch surfed. I showered at gyms. I scraped by on scraps of freelance work and sheer stubbornness. There were nights I sat in that car, parked behind gas stations, staring at the ceiling and whispering, why wasn't I enough for them to stay? But life has a way of turning. Rock bottom became my foundation. I threw myself into my writing, not just journaling, but building a blog, a newsletter, a brand. My words found people. My stories resonated. What started as scribbles in the dark turned into a platform read by thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. Publishers came knocking. Opportunities opened. Within 5 years, I wasn't the failure my parents had cast aside. I was a best-selling author with a speaking circuit, a savings account that could pay off both their mortgages twice over, and a name they could no longer dismiss. And then, of course, came the phone call. It was my mom first, her voice shaky. "We're so proud of you. Your father and I have been following everything. We'd love to reconnect. Maybe we can celebrate together, like a family again." Like a family again. Then came my dad, who once told me to sink. His voice was softer now, edged with something like desperation. "I know I was hard on you. I just wanted the best. But we're getting older. We want you back in our lives. We miss you." I sat there, phone in hand, remembering the nights I cried alone, the hunger pains, the humiliation of being cast out like trash. I thought about how easily they had cut me loose, how quickly they had turned away when I was no longer a source of pride. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I didn't owe them anything. So I told them the truth, calmly, without anger. "When I was at my lowest, you abandoned me. You watched me drown and told me to sink. I built my life without you. And now, you don't get to claim the version of me that survived." My mom cried. My dad grew silent. They tried to argue, to insist they meant well, but I ended the call. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a lost child. I felt like an adult who finally understood that family isn't always blood. It's who stays when life is unbearable. That night, I looked around my apartment, the walls lined with books that carried my name, the shelves full of awards, the home that was entirely mine. And I felt something I never thought I would feel again: peace. Because here's the truth, being abandoned at your lowest is brutal. It shatters you, but it also forces you to rebuild, brick by brick, into someone stronger than they ever expected. And when they come knocking, whether it's siblings, friends, partners, or parents, you realize you don't need them anymore. You don't need their validation, their approval, or their apologies. You've already made it. And that is the sweetest revenge of all.